September 1683. A city stands on the brink of annihilation. It is not just any city. It is Vienna, the Golden Apple, the capital of the Holy Roman Empire, and the gateway to the heart of Europe. Outside its walls, a colossal army, said to number 300,000, has been tearing it apart for 2 agonizing months. This is the apex of the Ottoman Empire's power, an unstoppable force that has crushed kingdoms and swallowed empires. Inside, 20,000 defenders, starving and diseased, are fighting in the rubble of their own homes. The end is near. This isn't just a siege, it's an execution. But on the hills above, something is gathering. A different kind of power. A desperate, last-minute alliance of old enemies and new friends, united by a single purpose: to hold the line. This is the story of the Battle of Vienna, the moment the tide of history was turned back by an unstoppable charge, and the day the true power of a fractured Europe was finally unleashed. To understand the sheer terror of 1683, you have to understand the Ottoman Empire. For over 300 years, it was the world's superpower. From the sands of Egypt to the gates of Morocco, from the plains of Persia to the rivers of Hungary, the word of the Sultan in Constantinople was law. And in 1683, the empire was led by Sultan Mehmed IV, but its true driving force was the ambitious, ruthless Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa. Kara Mustafa had a chip on his shoulder. He wanted to succeed where even the great Suleiman the Magnificent had failed in 1529. He wanted to capture Vienna. Vienna was more than a city. It was the Kizila Elma, the Golden Apple, a symbolic prize of immense proportions. Capturing it wouldn't just cripple the Habsburg dynasty, the Ottomans' chief rival. It would break the will of Christendom and open the door to the rest of Germany, to Italy, and perhaps to total European domination. Opposing him was the Habsburg Emperor, Leopold I, to be frank. Leopold's empire was a mess. The Holy Roman Empire was a fractured collection of squabbling German states. He was simultaneously threatened by France, under its son King Louis XIV, who was actively encouraging the Ottomans to attack his Habsburg rivals. Think about that. The most Christian king of France was in a tacit alliance with the Ottoman Sultan to destroy another Christian empire. This was the fractured, cynical, and desperate state of Europe. When Kara Mustafa's massive army, a force of Janissaries, Sepahi cavalry, Tatar raiders, and sappers began its inexorable march north in the spring of 1683, Leopold I did the only thing he could. He packed his bags and fled his capital, appealing to the rest of Europe for help that he had no reason to expect would ever come. In July 1683, the storm broke. The Ottoman vanguard, including 40,000 fearsome Tatar horsemen, swept the countryside clear. The main army, a sea of tents and banners that stretched for miles, settled in for a siege. Kara Mustafa was so confident, he didn't even try a full-scale assault. He would simply pound the city into dust. He famously declared he would not leave one stone upon another and would stable his horses in St. Stephen's Cathedral. Inside Vienna, command fell to Count Ernst Rüdiger von Sternberg. He had just 15,000 regular soldiers and about 5,000 citizen militia. They were facing an army at least 10 times their size, equipped with the finest artillery and, most terrifyingly, the world's best military engineers. The siege of Vienna was not a battle of knights and cavalry. It was a war fought underground. The Ottoman sappers, the Lagerkähler, were masters of tunnel warfare. Day and night, the people of Vienna listened. They put out buckets of water to see the ripples from digging. They listened for the telltale thud of picks beneath their feet. When the sound stopped, it meant the mine was packed with gunpowder. The defenders would frantically dig countermines to intercept the Ottoman tunnels, leading to terrifying pitch-black skirmishes fought with pistols and shovels deep in the earth. Above ground, things were worse. Disease dysentery was rampant. The city was starving. They ate cats, dogs, and rats. Gunpowder was low. Every day, Ottoman cannons bombed the walls, and every night, the citizens of Vienna, women, and children would work to repair the breaches, using anything they could find, often just their bare hands. By early September, the city was a living hell. The Great Berg Bastion, a key part of the defenses, had been blown wide open. The Ottomans were planning their final assault. Starhemberg, bleeding from his own wounds, knew they could not last another week. He sent a final, desperate message by rocket flare. No more time to lose. But but help was coming. Europe, for all its divisions, had finally recognized an existential threat. Pope Innocent XI had worked tirelessly, spending a fortune to broker an alliance. The German states, Saxony, Bavaria, Swabia, had put aside their differences and sent armies. This combined Holy Roman Empire army, led by the brilliant and previously defeated Charles of Lorraine, was marching to save his uncle-in-law, Leopold. But they weren't enough. They were missing one key ingredient. They were missing the one man Kara Mustafa truly feared. King John III Sobieski of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Sobieski was a giant of his time, a tactical genius, a veteran of countless wars against the Ottomans and Tatars, and a man who understood exactly what was at stake. He had signed a treaty with Leopold, but his own nobles were hesitant. Why should Polish blood be spilled for their arrogant Habsburg neighbors? But Sobieski knew that if Vienna fell, his own capital, Krakow, was next. He assembled his army, including his elite personal guard, the Winged Hussars. In a race against time, he marched his army 300 miles over the Carpathian Mountains in just 2 weeks, a logistical miracle. On September 11th, he stood on the Kohlenberg, a tall hill overlooking Vienna. What he saw would have broken a lesser man. He saw the largest army camp in the world, a city of 150,000 tents. He saw the battered, smoking ruins of Vienna, and he saw the Ottoman army caught between the city's walls and his new position. Kara Mustafa had made a catastrophic, arrogant mistake. He had failed to secure the heights behind him. Sobieski, now in supreme command of the 75,000-man Holy League army, turned to his generals. He famously said, "Tonight, that man will not be a blotto. Say to me, as the Tartars did, 'Thou art a king, but thou hast not conquered us.'" The plan was set. At dawn, they would attack.
Prepare the regiments, we ride at dawn.
The 12th of September, 1683. The battle began at 4 a.m. with a holy mass. Sobieski himself served it. The signal was given, and the German and Imperial troops on the left and center of the line began their advance. This was a brutal, slogging, 12-hour fight. They battled down the wooded slopes, through vineyards, and into the villages surrounding the city, pushing the Ottomans back, yard by bloody yard. Kara Mustafa was a disastrous commander. He was trying to fight a two-front war. His janissaries were still trying to take the city, even as a massive relief army was descending on his rear. He held his best troops, the Sipahi cavalry, in reserve, refusing to believe the threat was real. By 5 p.m., the Holy League infantry had done their job. They had cleared the rough terrain and pushed the Ottomans onto the open plain right in front of their own camp. Sobieski, on the right flank, saw his moment. The sun was beginning to set. The terrain was clear. The Ottoman lines were in disarray. He gave the order. First, the German cavalry, then the Poles. 18,000 horsemen moved forward as one. At the tip of this spear were 3,000 Polish Winged Hussars, led by the king himself. This was not a charge. This was a human avalanche. The Winged Hussars were the most terrifying cavalry on earth. They were heavy shock troops, covered in armor. Their 80-foot-long lances, hollowed for lightness, were longer than any spear or pike, meaning they always hit the enemy first. And their wings frames of wood and eagle feathers were not for flight. They were for terror. They whistled and whooshed in the charge, a sound that mimicked a hurricane, a sound that broke the morale of men and terrified horses. Sobieski bellowed Wayne, Vidi Deus Vicit. I came, I saw, God conquered, and led the charge. For the Ottomans, it was the apocalypse. An 18,000-man wall of steel, wood, and feathers, thundering down a hillside, screaming for blood. The Hussar lances shattered the front ranks of the janissaries. The sheer kinetic energy of the charge was unstoppable. The Ottoman lines didn't just break, they evaporated. Panic turned to a rout. Kara Mustafa, seeing his personal standard fall, fled for his life, leaving his entire camp, his wealth, his harem, his plans for the conquest of Europe, behind. Inside Vienna, the exhausted defenders heard the thunder and the screams. They saw the Ottoman army vanish. They had held on. They had been saved. The siege was broken.
We survived! The siege is broken!
The aftermath was staggering. The next day, Sobieski entered the city he had saved. He was hailed as the savior of Europe. He famously paraphrased Julius Caesar, writing to the Pope, "We came, we saw, God conquered." He was right. The victory at Vienna was total. The Holy League had defeated an army more than twice its size and stopped the Ottoman Empire at its absolute peak. Kara Mustafa, the ambitious Grand Vizier, paid the price for his failure. On Christmas Day, by order of the Sultan, he was strangled with a silk cord in Belgrade. But the Battle of Vienna was more than just a victory. It was the turning point. It was the hinge upon which modern European history swung. Before 1683, the story of Europe was one of disparate defense against Ottoman expansion. After 1683, the story was one of continuous European attack. This was the start of the Great Turkish War, a 16-year conflict that saw the Habsburgs reconquer all of Hungary and Transylvania. The Ottoman Empire would never again be a serious offensive threat to the heart of Europe. Its long, slow decline had begun. And what about the true power of Europe from our title? In 1683, it wasn't a single nation, a single king, or a single parliament. It was a fragile, temporary, and deeply flawed idea. It was the last gasp realization that, despite all their rivalries, Habsburg versus Bourbon, Protestant versus Catholic, there were moments when survival depended on unity. The power that saved Vienna was a coalition. It was the grit of the German infantry, the leadership of a Polish king, the wealth of the papacy, and the desperation of the Austrian people, all forged in the fire of an existential crisis. The world we live in was shaped by the dust and blood of that September day. In the captured Ottoman camp, the victorious soldiers found sacks of strange-smelling beans. According to legend, a man named Franz Kolschitsky, who had served as a spy during the siege, claimed them as his reward. He used them to open Vienna's first coffee house. The very culture of the Viennese cafe, a cornerstone of Western intellectual life, was a direct spoils of this war. What if they had lost? What if the charge had failed? What if Sobieski had stayed home? It's a terrifying thought. A world where the golden apple fell, where the high water mark of Ottoman power washed over Central Europe. The Battle of Vienna is a story of incredible courage, of fatal arrogance, and of a moment when the entire continent held its breath. It is the story of how a charge by 3,000 winged horsemen saved a civilization. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into one of history's most critical battles. The Battle of Vienna is so packed with drama, we could only scratch the surface. What part of this story blows your mind the most? Is it the underground war of the sappers? Or is it the sheer power of the Winged Hussar charge? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love history's greatest turning points, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our next video. We have so many more stories to tell. Until next time, stay curious.